Hi everyone! I want to start by having some trigger warnings for this video for domestic abuse, ableist and racist slurs, allegations of different forms of abuse, including that of soliciting from minors. The video is chaptered, but I do recommend that if you're triggered by any of these things to genuinely just skip this one. Links, sources, everything you need to know is down below. The description box is a lot slimmer today because I don't want to promote stuff on videos like this. So yeah, I know this is a bit silly to have to bring up, but I do, if you can tell, have a different audio setup than before. So if you're having any issues with like it's coming in one ear or the channel's weird or something like that, comment that down below, please, just because I'm not necessarily able to hear it once it uploads. That's that on that. There was a long history of ImAllexx's horrendous actions on the platform, and I want to add that this video is not made to be opportunistic. The ads are on for the sake of exposure because when I turn them off, they don't go anywhere. My channel's too small to just kind of gain viewership off of the amount of subscribers that I have, and I think that this video, because of how comprehensive I've tried to make it, I think is something that's kind of important to share. I also want to state that I have been consistent in these opinions before. I will put in the description my video on Slazo, Kwite, Pyro cynical that I made last year, where I describe the sort of situations that we're going to go through today, and I've definitely mentioned it in streams and stuff. I've even been consistent in DMs with people and things of the sort. So I just want to state that actually this was a video I've thought about making for a long time. Not obviously regarding like the last section, I didn't know about that in advance. This was someone that I felt had some issues that were long-standing, and I'd heard a couple things through the grapevine, if you will, but I never want to confirm based on also just people's personal information, but not nearly to this extent. More in things regarding like falling out with other creators and things of the like. In this video, I'm going to go through all of Alex's major career scandals that he has somehow come past. I'm of course going to go through these statements from Alice and Annie as well. The reason why I'm even doing this after there's been a lot of people kind of talking about Alex, and also there's been a lot of arguments about the people that are so-called celebrating Alex's downfall that has kind of come out, and it's sort of, the discourse has shifted between not liking that those people have those attitudes versus what Alex has actually done versus taking away from the people at hand. I think that there's a lot of complexity, and I think I want to give some leniency to those people to a certain degree, because you'll see how bad it actually is if you weren't aware before that. Because people are saying a lot of stuff about Cavos, Keemstar, and many of these sorts of commentary channels. A lot of these people did have personal vendettas with Alex in advance, so there was a lot of kind of self-serving possibility to come through this. But I do think there's also somewhat a satisfaction of a lot of these that were lying underneath finally being able to come forward, because this has kind of been what his whole career has been like. I have been pretty open for years about my dislike for ImAllexx, both publicly and privately, and felt a sense of justice was being served when these things were able to come out, because it was difficult to speak about him before, even just from the fear of backlash, because he had a pretty young but dedicated fan base and made content that was pretty lighthearted. So when you wanted to throw shots at somebody like that, for example, you have the potential of kind of making people think like, oh, you're just, a hater, you're jealous of them, and then they won't take your point seriously. So I'm putting all of this out because it gives an idea of my viewpoints. It gives an idea of the overall perception. It also kind of sheds light on why his friends turned on him so quickly, or people that were publicly considered to be his friends, and this is the sake of this video. Part 1 is who is ImAllexx's. Part 2, ImAllexx, Zaptie, and Hot Wet Soup. This is the first major controversy. Part 3, Alex, Slazo, Shay, and commentary. This is one of the biggest controversies in Alex's career. Part 4, I have Eboys and British commentary community. In Part 5, I have Alice's statement about Alex, as well as Twitter user and fellow commentator, sort of Reddit video person, KingAnii statement as well. And to end, we're going to go with the conclusion. So let's get right into this whole thing. Who is ImAllexx? So I'm going to be upfront and state prior to everything, as I've already kind of said, I have a very strong bias against this person, because not only do I not like that he's opportunistic and arrogant, and I just think kind of overall an insufferable individual just based on the way that he's interacting with people, he makes the most basic, bare bones, milquetoast ass content with a nice camera and snappy editing, so teenagers think it's good.
What is the concept here? Because I'm a bit lost.
He's baking a cake or something.
I think it's churros, because he said hashtag thick churro.
That might be like a euphemism, I think, maybe, sure.
I don't know.
My big thick churros. Okay, mate.
Does he make like food but make it like a thirst trap?
Yeah, basically. That is the gist of this account.
I must.
There are so many channels in the commentary sphere that I try to avoid being shady about, because people will ask me about them, sometimes in my live chats and things like that, that are genuinely just carried by their editor, just from the fact that they have a lot of subscribers, or they knew other people, or they were opportunistic in the way that Alex was. They got in early, got into that algorithm, and have been pushed through, but don't really provide anything of any value, really, in my opinion. Once you're the 15th person to make that identical video, I don't think anyone has ever really said, yeah, this really valid good point made by Elmsley, made by ImAllexx's. I have trouble pronouncing his last name for some reason, which is funny because it's like super Queen's English. So I'm just gonna call him ImAllexx's or Alex, because Elmsley is hard for me to say without having to do it like that. So ImAllexx's, who goes by Alex Elmsley on his second channel, is a commentator who started in like the surge of commentary channels in 2016 and 2017, and at the time kind of had a little bit of a different style, in the sense that it was not as antagonistic, I guess you could say. It was way more silly, but it was also way less researched, way less backed up, way less structured, which ended up kind of resulting in a lot of the sort of controversies that he's gotten into since. So Alex is from the UK, as some other predominant commentary YouTubers are. Now, from what I've seen in videos like that talked about Alex's career and the progressions and all that kind of stuff, got the traction to his channel was a shout out and collab video from fellow commentary creator Pyro in 2017. Alex made commentary videos that went through many dramas and continued to rise to popularity through commenting on major scandals like YouTube pranks, Dramageddon 2 and James Charles, dramatic video titles with clickbaits such as We Need to Stop X. That was kind of like one of his more like famous series, but it was just him saying this person did bad thing that everyone already knew about. I think that's the first video of his I've ever seen. I think was like we need to stop Lele Pons or something like that, I feel like. But yeah, we need to stop Reaction Time, we need to stop Tana Mojo. That's kind of the genre of videos, as well as making these kind of cheap reactions to TLC clips. So Alex has always made a point to align himself with other members within the commentary community that are the most popular at a given time, and trying to lean into people that have like squeaky clean reputation. When we're talking about people like Pyro, for example, this is not somebody that he would be willing to align with today, because Pyro is edgy. Pyro has videos of him saying slurs on the internet. Pyro has the furry stuff. Pyro got, some skeletons in the closet. That is not somebody that he'd be willing to align with. But if we think about one of his most recent public friend group, when we're talking about people like KingAnii and ImAllexx's, we don't even know, by we I mean the general population. So sure, probably somebody on 4chan's dug it up by now, but as for the most part, we don't even know what ImAllexx looks like. What do we know about KingAnii? Is his name even Will? Because like a lot of these content creators share like nothing about themselves and just sit and watch other videos or talk about situations. But these like creators are almost borderline closer to being reaction channels. Alex toes the line between that a little bit more. Because for example, when we're thinking 67 years ago, when we talked about people that he aligned with, the likes of Pyro, Zaptie, and Colossal's Crazy, these are all channels that, if you were to talk about kind of the ethos of them, they're way more edgy than what Alex is going for. And like, especially Pyro and Colossal, if you like, think about it this way: watch an episode or not. Obviously, you don't have to do any of this, but if you watch like an episode of, for example, like the TBH podcast, which has Pyro, Nerd City, Colossus Crazy, and Dolan Dark, and then you watch like an Eboys video, for example, it's like that's the two vastly different types of persona that Alex has merged through. I would say Pyro and Colossal are very similar, how they've kind of always been. Pyrocynical just doesn't make the same type of content that he used to make, but his general persona seems quite similar. And then ImAllexx's in Eboys is this sort of like borderline like preteen content creator that he sort of morphed into. When I was watching the last Eboys video, I could not help but draw so many mental parallels, like the James Charles Sister Squad video, because it's genuinely the same energy that it almost looks like it's like a cheap ripoff of those, because like the Sister Squad videos, like Emma Chamberlain, the Dolan twins, and James Charles seem to actually like each other more, which is nuts to say in retrospect. More recently, Alex has been in this sort of silly British commentary sphere that iNabber was also in, but after I think the whole kind of Eboys debacle and also just like the way they are in general, iNabber is way more leaning into like video SL content now, which will kind of collab with some of them on that sillier content, but that's just not what he makes. But this sphere has creators KingAnii, ImAllexx's, iNabber, and James Marriott, but these collabs have kind of died out for the most part within the last year or so. ImAllexx's was the original channel that had, well, I literally I started scripting this like the day after the Google Doc came out, and my quote says, "The original main channel that currently sits with over 2 million subs. What is aged like milk? You know? I'll take aged like milk for $300 or whatever the Jeopardy statement is. That is..." Anyway, many hypothesized that this channel had kind of died out. He needed to kind of move to something else because this guy's giving cockroach. So what he did was he essentially moved to another channel, the Alex Elmsley. I can't say that. Anyway, moved to that channel to kind of, wipe away the persona, to sort of move on to a different audience instead of trying to rectify the wrongdoings that he's made. Because he has this ethos that he's this thought process that he's this like genius creator, despite the fact that if you put an ImAllexx video, a KingAnii video, a ImAllexx's video, a Jake Doolittle video, there's that guy that has all the rings. I don't even remember what his name is. The one that said was it Marsha P. Johnson was inspired him for his fits or something like that. There's so many Oompaville, Cinnamon Toast Ken. There are so many of them that make super similar content. So it turns out I was supposed to have a button on that makes the mic not peak so much. So me being an idiot is not new to me personally, but it is what it is. However, when we are looking at this here channel, the screenshot that you're seeing right now, there are 3 comments I have to make. 1, it is way too JoJo Siwa dense for me. That's really weird. For 2, do you notice how every single thumbnail pose is the same? Except for the one that he's clickbaiting some sort of bad news. And one that is seemingly supposed to be a little bit more serious, but his angry face looks like when a toddler knocks their like little sippy cup off of the little high chair thing. So when I say things that are overtly negative in regard to this sort of like content mill, no effort, bullcrap content, and how his ego is unsubstantiated, this is what I mean. Especially when we look at the fact that there's a 10-minute, 14-second runtime, 10-minute, 2-second runtime. He didn't make the sad news one to 8 minutes, which is crazy for him. And then you've got most of them are very short videos. And in this screenshot of just 16 videos, there are 3 on JoJo Siwa, making them almost 25% JoJo Siwa content. But yeah, I wanted to note that when looking at the second channel as well. which I believe was also at over 400k before this. Rip Bozo, obviously. Now, obviously, there's better or worse in each one of them, but in general, that format, if you had me sit through a bunch of those videos and then you had me read a script of ImAllexx and they'd be like, is this one of the people you just watched? I'd be like, yeah. This is making me sound like I think I'm a god, that I think I make great content that's unique and no one else makes. Not at all. I'm Walmart Smoky Glow Girl. I'm Discount Philosophy Tube. I'm Pawn Shop. No, I wouldn't even say ContraPoints. Like, if we're comparing me to ContraPoints, I'm like those like Arden surprise bags that when you pull out and there's like a phone case in it, but it's for like an iPhone 7. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I sit, you know? It's just that when the reason why I guess I'm so pessimistic, well, also because I don't like this guy. Duh, we've been there. But I think it's also just because for him to say he's this like professional, because it comes together more when we talk about the allegations later, and also just like throughout the scandals that he's had, he thinks he's so great when the content he makes is like below average at best. And that's why, because like if you had somebody like ContraPoints or that make these like huge, you know, elaborate projects, be like, I'm really good at what I do, I'd be like, yeah, queen, period. Like, you know. But when you've got this guy that pumps out a couple videos a week watching TLC 600-pound life clips and being like, oh my god, that person is so overweight, it's like, yeah, you picked it. Like, I'm not really gonna be sitting here being like, oh my god, this is like the best thing since sliced bread, you know what I'm saying? But now we're gonna move it to his controversies. So we got part 2, ImAllexx's, Zaptie, and Hot Wet Soup. So this whole debacle is often considered the first major controversy in ImAllexx's career that he somehow managed to come out of quite literally scot-free in every stretch of the imagination. Also kind of became the beginning of sparking like a pattern of behavior that showed him kind of betraying creators that he had to sort of climb a social ladder. For context, before we get too deep into this, Zaptie was an up-and-coming commentary channel from Canada who was growing very rapidly at the same time as Alex. Pyro actually had this like very brief period of time where I guess he was gone on vacation or something, and he was still pumping out videos, and he would let people kind of feature on them. And Zaptie was also one of the people who featured, including, and ImAllexx's was also doing them as well. Zaptie was also shouted out by Pyro in a couple of other videos as well. Hot Wet Soup was a podcast that ran over 7 years ago that had 3 creators on it: Zaptie, Bionic Pig, and Elvis the Alien. Bionic Pig and Elvis the Alien still make content to this day, but they tend to focus on making kind of reviews and commentary on like mainstream media and film. Zaptie, to some, is often referred to as kind of the first major canceled YouTuber in the commentary space. What happened, to my understanding, is a little bit fuzzy, but I'm going to relay the details based on what I've seen, based on the videos I can watch. But there are a couple of factors that come into how hard this was to kind of put together in a cohesive timeline. Because 1, this was done before people consistently collected evidence on people at all times. 2, because those involved, i.e. ImAllexx's, are very dishonest. And 3, Zaptie deleted all of his social media accounts and his videos and everything, and a lot of this stuff is not archived, and it just depends on other people's coverage of the information. There is a Zaptie archive channel on YouTube. That's kind of the limitations on, and it isn't, not even everything is always there. So Alex was very young when this happened. He was like 17 years old. This is where I learned that Alex and I are like the same age. It's so wild to me that so many people will actually like blow up for making like commentary content while they're literally like teenagers. And I feel like some people can consider that like my ranting about how bad his content is like, well, he's a kid. No, I'm talking about content like that he's making like a month ago. Like it's just been exactly the same since he was like high school age, which in and of itself is kind of a red flag. I feel like, where it's like you're genuinely just chasing the bag at all times. I always kind of get sussed out when someone has a YouTube channel and they never ever do any risks. They never try to seek out any cool projects. They just keep churning out the same slop, i.e. Illuminati, when we talked about in the last video. Zaptie, whose name was Ed, was someone who was rapidly growing as a commentary channel because not only was he blowing up in the commentary community, but the Hot Wet Soup podcast was doing really well as well. Then suddenly there was a Hot Wet Soup podcast episode called The End, which featured Bionic Pig, Elvis the Alien, and ImAllexx's, who was allegedly Ed's best friend at the time within the YouTube space. Podcast episode was a huge mess. Nicholas Diorio made a video about Zaptie. This is like one of his biggest videos early in his channel that kind of put him to where he is now, where he talked about kind of like how much ImAllexx's took the mic, literally, with calculating that 56% of the podcast runtime alone was just Alex yapping. Despite the fact that he was genuinely just like a placeholder position in that podcast for that one episode. There were so many times in this podcast where my jaw dropped because I started like a day job, so I was commuting and listening to this. It is mind-boggling, this Alex's thought process even this long ago. Now, there is another person, like another player in the game, if you will, named Anthony, but for the sake of this, I'm not going to go into all of that. Nicholas Diorio's video will be tagged in the description if you kind of want to see what went on with Zaptie, and that would be a much better place than this. But this is just assuming that you want to know like why everyone was mad, and you don't need to know like every specific little detail about every situation. Essentially, Zaptie got tied up in his growing relevance, and people kept saying he cheated on his wife. Like, I've heard that like more recently. I think Zaptie was like 22 or 21 years old. I don't think he was married. I don't know where the wife thing came in because I ain't seen any of this stuff either. But he was cheating on his partner regardless. It doesn't really matter if they're married or not. Alex claimed that it was 3 to 4 people. And then there was another short clip where he said like 8. But over 7 years later, only one girl has come up. I'll have the twit longer tagged down below. Alex also claimed that the people that Ed was cheating with were 16, 17 years old. But then one of them was the one that came out in the twit longer was actually lying about her age, and she was like 14. Alex says that Ed knew this the whole time, essentially, but that's been shown over and over again to not be the case. Podcast was essentially an hour of Alex villainizing antisocial personality disorder, or what has been formerly referred to as being a sociopath. Alex goes on about how also that he has been Ed's moral compass, as if anyone needs to take tips on this dumbass. There's even a line about how Alex has this like big following and Ed needed to like follow in his footsteps, which again, this is just instilling further like patterns of behavior that will come up on and on and on throughout this whole process. Alex even goes as far as to say that Ed is a sociopath, and through that doesn't understand the difference between right and wrong, and that actually logically he does know what right or wrong is because Alex has been guiding him so much.
No, I don't feel like he did this out being a kid. He does know the difference between right and wrong because he has learned it from the people he's around. He has learned from us what right and wrong is.
I don't think being a sociopath degrades your ability to know what's right.
He does know what's right and wrong because I've sat in calls with him and I've told him, and he knows, and he has been aware, and he's made moral decisions before, like they're just his morals, not other people's.
I mean, just look at his videos. Like, obviously, he knows what's right or wrong.
Well, he knows that Onision is a Tanamojo is somebody who should be attacked, and like he came up with those. Mainly by himself, like he saw, and he can still see stuff like that. He just can't feel empathy.
Personally, he can't. Yeah, he can't feel for other people. He can't care,
and he holds himself at the highest regard. So you got to keep that in mind. He holds himself at the highest regard. Everything he does is for him, and also he does not care about what he has to do it. Okay, that's the 2 important things that really should be kept in mind. So number one, he was going out with other YouTuber. You've probably seen her. As I said, support is appreciated. He sent his way. Now he got with, and they were in a relationship, and since the beginning, pretty much from the timelines we've crossed over with all the girls, some we can't name, she was being cheated on with 4 other girls who were 16 and 17 years old.
After the podcast came out, Ed put out a twit longer clarifying the allegations and telling everyone that they were being a bit too mean to the Hot Wet Soup podcast members because they were being kind of targeted online for being kind of negligent and silly with how they handled the situation, which to a certain degree I can agree with. Also, Ed had to go in this twit longer to claim that the Hot Wet Soup kind of allegations that he was a sociopath were not true, and rather he had, I believe, major depressive disorder or something along that line. I'm actually going to read both of Zaptie's twit longers here right now because I think they clarifies a lot, but also I cannot actually find the victim that had come out. I can't find her twit longer anywhere. So what I'll do is hopefully I'll find the clip in the Nicholas Diorio video, but for now I'll read these 2. They're on screen right now also. Briefly addressing the responses I've seen. If you're looking for me to add anything, I will not be, just commenting on what I've said. I don't think any of the guys on Hot Wet Soup nor Alex were in the wrong. I get where people are coming from, but I don't agree with it. Several people have contacted me or replied to others saying that they think the podcast was a backstab or a betrayal. But after talking to everyone for a while, which is also worth noting, I spoke with everyone throughout the day yesterday, I'm starting to see that I likely would have done the very same if the roles were reversed. They did what was best for them, which I can understand. None of what was said were accusations. In case people didn't see that tweet, they weren't. Some seem to think everyone's jumping to conclusions or making assumptions, and that isn't the case. When the people who called out the behavior I was exhibiting are getting more hate than I am for the behavior, that's a bit confusing. And if my name was Leafy here or Keemstar, the reaction to this would have been incredibly different, and you all know that. I encourage everyone to listen to the entirety of the podcast. I feel like a lot of people have listened to the first 10 minutes and just figured that it was all shit talk, which isn't the case. I tweeted, "Make of it what you will," not to introduce doubt into anyone's minds, but to suggest that you should make of me what you will after listening and learning. Something I've always talked about in my videos is not generalize or jump to conclusions. I'm seeing a lot of that. Stop that. And this is the second one that came out just 10 days later as everything began to spiral. A big part of that spiral was this person named Deodor Anthony or something like that. Again, I'm not really going to get into that too much. Again, Nicholas Dioro's video is tagged because this is not a video on Zaptie specifically. Here is the other twit longer after everything started like spiraling a lot more. I'm not a sociopath, and where I've been. We'll rip off that band-aid off first. I'm not a sociopath, never have been. My exact wording was that I was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, which turned into Ed's a diagnosed sociopath. There was no diagnosis and there was no therapist or doctor. As admitted, I was lying for months saying anything I thought would make things better. That switch, and I told a lie to make things much worse, which worked very well. I've never provided proof of this diagnosis or the name of the doctor that diagnosed me for full clarity, but it was a lie. I was sticking by tooth and nail and even trying to change my personality to pretend I wasn't feeling things that I was. I feel guilt and feel empathy, and I was pretending not to suit a narrative that I made up. I have actually been diagnosed with major depressive disorder with post-traumatic stress disorder as an additional possible problem. But to clarify, I am not diagnosed with PTSD. I only show some traits of it, so it's something we're keeping an eye on. I was unintentionally hurting people the same way I've been hurting for a very long time, so I took advantage of several people romantically. I didn't meet the large majority of these people, and those I did meet were over 18, but that doesn't excuse the behavior. I misled them, manipulated them, and hurt them. This wasn't a conscious effort at all. I wasn't talking to and wooing people with the sole intent to hurt them later, but it was something I was definitely doing. Some of these girls were younger than me and fans of my content, and I inadvertently took advantage of that power dynamic. It was incredibly wrong of me, and I'm sorry. My perception of what a romantic relationship should be has been incredibly warped by my previous experiences with them, and I've hurt people who didn't deserve it as a result, not making any excuses for that either. I know these past few weeks have been incredibly hurtful to a lot of people I care about, and even to a lot of you that don't know me personally. I'm sorry to all these people, and unless you've blocked me, you'll be getting personal apologies as I manage to write them, probably over the next few days. There's a lot of people I owe apologies to, I know. As for where I've been, I've already committed social suicide, so I've moved to the next natural step. I've been hospitalized since last Monday, no electronics, hence no word from me, receiving constant group and individual therapy for various issues I've left buried for years. These issues will not be dug up publicly. I was discharged from the hospital earlier today and will be continuing therapy for a few weeks starting tomorrow before beginning sessions with a psychologist every week until Lord knows when. My actions aren't excusable and the pain I've caused is going to be difficult to undo. The one thing I really hope people can take from this beyond me is that not everyone's cry for help looks exactly the same. I've evidently been trying for several months to no avail and finally came to a head with a massive lie. I guess I thought all the hurt I was causing would blow up in my face much earlier, and the fact that it didn't made the hit much bigger. In a weird way, it was good because it really forced me to a place where it was either I take my own life or get help. I chose the latter. I don't blame anyone for not seeing that cry for help, as it is really hard to read, not to mention looking at plenty of YouTubers with the mindset that they're all sociopaths will have you finding plenty of things that line up, but that's exactly what all of this harm and behavior has been. It wasn't only destructive, it was self-destructive, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. The cry was finally heard when I got help, and I will continue to be receiving it for a long time, but I'm going to try my best to repair the damage I caused as well as I can. I'll mostly just be focusing on making videos when I have the spare time and obviously continue to go to therapy. There's a lot of friendships I destroyed through this, and I don't expect to get them back anytime soon, but hopefully I can at least apologize, try to set things somewhat straight. There's going to be a lot of people who think I'm lying, I get that, but I hope you can keep an open mind. I understand if you lost respect for me. I'm sorry, I will do better. Then a couple of days after this, the allegations of being a came out, as there were claims that some of the girls were 13. I misspoke here and said the wrong name. The person who came out with a twit longer was named Heather. Was like 14, 15, but catfished Ed as about 17 years old, which was legal in the state that she resided in, and Ed is Canadian, and the age of consent here is 16. So, like, across the entire country too. It's no like ifs, ands, or buts. It is in Canada, it's 18 if you're in a position of authority. So, for example, if you had, let's say your high school, for example, like, and the teacher's like 22, you cannot be 16 and hook up with your teacher. That is still statutory R word, you know what I mean? Like, that's still fully against the law. So Canada, it's like 16 with an asterisk. In a situation like what Ed was doing, it's 16. No nude images were exchanged at all, despite ImAllexx claiming that there was, saying that he admitted to it all in the twit longer, which is not true. ImAllexx's is just recontextualizing and stretching some of the poor actions that Ed was admitting to in that piece, but there is nowhere that says any sort of like hyper explicit sexual content was exchanged. Zaptie updated everyone on Reddit later, talking about how everything had happened and the remorse he felt, and how when he heard that the girl was younger than he was ever told or notified about, that he was just like, I think he said he vomited all day, actually, if I'm going to remember the language correctly. From this point, people began to dox Ed, his personal number, personal accounts, social media, emails, all that kind of stuff. And he left the platform after making a final video kind of stating that he had done wrong and he had been horrible, but also that he shouldn't be doxxed, which I think is a pretty fair claim. From the video where he explained what happened, he stated things that just like had gone way, way, way too far. In 2019, Zaptie did briefly try to make a return under a channel called Airplane Food with a video about Spider-Man that, to what I recall, he had actually kind of promised prior to the Zaptie name kind of falling down the drain. Ed was then doxxed again with including his full legal name. So he deleted all of the Zaptie stuff, this new channel, all of his social medias, everything, and just disappeared from the internet completely. To Nicholas DiOrio, in his video, so Nick had talked about how he was going to make this, Hannah had come directly to him and did a sort of text interview with him. She said that she catfished him and that no sexually explicit content was ever exchanged. And once she got older, she admits that the way that she had framed it in the original twit longer kind of was stretched in its dishonesty to frame it in a particular way, in a way that she would kind of never do now that she was older. Me again. I think something too that I noticed in this whole process was that there was a lot of almost like victim blamey language regarding the minor, and how there was like the language of catfishing. I'm just kind of stating it as it was reported in retrospect. While a child is definitely capable of lying, someone should be responsible regardless who is an adult, which in the case of this is Ed. And I do think you have to keep in mind as well with this that he is off the internet, he is not talking to these people, and the quote-unquote justice that would need to be served was in the approach when looking back at this situation.
So some spastic who hates this would be like, we could Zaptie and just said like, fucks the wrong people.
Heather created a twit longer where she stated that she was manipulated, lewd images were exchanged, Zaptie encouraged her, and most importantly, she was 16 years of age. On top of that, she attached a few screenshots that made their way around quickly. This included the infamous, "You're worth getting arrested for" response that's so memeable, it's probably the biggest reason that these allegations have still remained largely unquestioned to this day. The first thing that caught my eye specifically was that the main twit longer right here says, "No nudes were sent," and the message implies right here that the girl was wearing some form of clothes. On top of that, these are very blatantly cropped, with no scrolling DM proof or extra context for each screenshot. We genuinely don't have any idea whether things like "you're worth getting arrested for" were a joke or not, because we only see what Heather wanted us to see. Before you say, "Oh, who joke about something like that?" let me help remind you that I just vindicated a YouTuber who told the girl it's time in the DMs, and that girl was literally accusing him of rape. Context matters, and people make edgy jokes. Also, she claims she was manipulated here, but the only thing these screenshots show is her blatantly flirting with Zaptie, claiming manipulation. Just seems like it was the right thing to say when you're dealing with somebody who's accused of being a sociopath already. On top of that, from a legal standpoint, wherever he was at the time had a legal consent age of 16, as confirmed by the entire cast of Hot Wet Soup, unless they were lying. Whether it was Canada or a state that he resided in, he could have legally had sex with this girl. For this reason, I was confused as to why this was even an issue at first. I rationalized it as such. well, I guess two people who legally could have sex with each other were in an e-relationship, whatever that means, for a few months, and then they had a falling out. The girl decided to call him out mid-drama for a bit of clout, and you know what? That's not a crazy leap of judgment to land on. And for all you Brits out there standing on your high horses with your arms crossed furiously, getting ready to spam my comment section, it's legal over there for you guys to do this shit, so get the stick out of your But this is where the story really goes off the rails, so hold on tight. A few months later, it had become public information that Heather had been lying to the entire community about her age. She was allegedly 13 years old. So now on top of all of that, Zaptie was catfished. So this leads to crazy theories that, Zaptie's into prepubescent children, or Zaptie broke the law, or Zaptie knew the whole time, and the internet spiraled into a show. So just to summarize, we have a girl who claimed she was 16, who was 13, who claimed she was manipulated, but didn't show any evidence, and now people are beginning to tweet that he sent and received nudes from this girl. And on top of that, these Snapchat leaks show Heather giving a statement in tweets by Deodor Anthony's girlfriend. I think it's funny right off the bat that she's friends with Hyojin, so we know just what community this is coming from. But right here we see her admit to catfishing and lying about her age directly in these screenshots. But do you want to know what the real punchline is? Do you know the kicker? These Snapchats have nothing to do with Zaptie. I'm dead serious. This was in December of 2016, around the time that Heather was involved with Zaptie, but the same three people are involved simultaneously with an entirely different catfishing situation on an entirely different YouTuber. Are the red flags flying yet? And if you're curious, these allegations went from, well, Nick Cash is sexting children, to, don't exchange nude with fans. The second Hey Watch Your Mouth asked him to show portions of the screenshot where Nick verified her age. I don't know the whole situation, I'm not well versed on the situation, but I do know one thing, it never went anywhere.
This brings us to the next situation, but before I do that, I do want to kind of just like summarize it to a certain degree. Essentially, like, ImAllexx's saw that there was somebody who could potentially damage his persona because the two were associated together as kind of being a little bit, at the time, like Pyro's proteges. But to completely spiral immediately, like within a couple of days of hearing everything, to make a video to condemn every aspect of him and just go on and on and on and on about how horrible he was, and then to also just villainize antisocial personality disorder for like an hour, is obviously like a very stupid move. But at the time, commentary was not where it's solidified now. Alex was still very young, so obviously there's a lot that you can kind of discuss in this regard. This brings us, however, to our next situation. Part 3, Slazo, ImAllexx's, Che, and commentary. This all started on June 10th, 2019, where Che, or at FizzyPop, posted a tweet longer about her relationship with Slazo that went on from 2016 to 2017, cited that she had come out because she heard that Michael, which is Slazo's real name, had been acting strangely towards some people. This was ImAllexx's claim, specifically. Surprise in Minecraft, I guess, in game, because obviously I can't really super specifically say that. Che continues and says that she felt that she needed to talk about this to kind of reach more people so that this like wouldn't happen again. And when she tweeted Squizzy, or Hyojin, who was dating Pyro at the time, Bluesdank, ImAllexx's, Dolan Dark, and KingAnii, who we will revisit later, came out to condemn Michael and support their friend in talking about the allegations. Kwite was also involved in this, which I had actually completely forgotten about until now. For reference, just prior to this, Alex and Michael had actually lived together for a few weeks, and they had spent a week collabing and partying around with, I believe, other creators in Australia. And I think this is like off script. I think there's a Cold Ones episode with Pyro in 2019, which was like the same week that this was all going on. To summarize the tweet longer, which I will try to link in the description, I did find it at one point, but I don't remember how I found it, so I'll have to go back. She claimed that Michael was abusive to her, berating her, and making her feel awful. She also brought up a point of her being 14 at the time, which commentators fixated on, but neglected to mention that Slazo was 16 at the time, so was also a minor. She also claimed that Michael was essentially trying to pressure her into sex before she wanted to, stating that she had told him directly that she wanted to wait until she was like 16 years old or something along that line, which Michael disproves in his video called My Side, which is currently unlisted on YouTube. Che also provides screenshots of Discord conversations that were out of context, even so far as to add a screenshot of a horrific edgy joke that said it's time. As soon as everything came out, Alex began tweeting about how horrible of a person Michael was. The same sort of trigger reaction that he had with Zaptie, but the thing is that one, I feel like you should have learned since last time this happened. I feel like that should be kind of obvious to me. 2, he was much older this time. He was like 20. And 3, I feel like asking Michael maybe what happened first would have potentially been a good idea. Once things escalated, Slazo disappeared from the internet for a couple of weeks, where he came back with a personable, well-constructed response, the aforementioned my side, where he exposed so many personal details that should have never had to meet the internet in the first place. Michael also discussed that he was a bad boyfriend and provided many screenshots that were out of context and included random edgy jokes, and that she had made a point to kind of crop out any sort of notion that she was in on the joke, and just to show Michael as an aggressor.
All these things she's saying. Next, she goes on to describe our first date, where she says, Michael, on our first date, touched me in a cinema, despite me never kissing someone before. I assumed this was normal, although I was uncomfortable by it and let it happen. And now this confused me when I read it at first, because it's not really how it happened. It's true that we did meet on our first date, and we did go to the cinema. That much is true. And it was very awkward. We'd only talked online before that. Neither of us really knew what we were doing too well. We went into the cinema, we had our first kiss, our teeth hit each other's, neither of us knew what we were doing, and I was willing to call it quits there, when she pulls my hand down and says to touch her, which is a pretty long way from how she portrays it in her version of the story. In fact, she was actually the one who brought up the entire idea of doing anything in the cinema. It was her idea, and I had no reason to believe she wasn't as in on this as I was, so I'm not sure why she made it look like this. And I think it's worth mentioning that I thought this was completely normal at the time as well. This is my first relationship, unless you count a week-long year 9 relationship where the most we did was hold hands on the way home. So unless you count that, this was my first real relationship, and I had no idea what to expect. And now, before we move forward, I do want to mention that she mentions in this bit that she's never kissed someone before. This confused me, because that's not the impression I had. In fact, when we were walking around the streets of Sydney while we were dating, we passed by a Woolworths or something, and she told me a story from what happened outside that Woolworths once, where she and an ex-girlfriend of hers kissed in front of some religious guy preaching about gay marriage. So unless she told that same lie to me and a friend of mine who heard the same thing, then I'm not sure why you would lie about that. And on top of this, on the same note, she also mentions later in the post that she's never been in a relationship before. This isn't the impression that I was under. I was under the impression, from these screenshots here, that she's had at least 2 boyfriends and 1 girlfriend before we ever met. So I'm not sure why she would say this, and she had more relationship experience than me when we began dating, for what it's worth. Hey guys, it's me from One Day in the Future here. I just had some things I needed to clear up a bit better, and so I figured I'd just re-record a bit of this video. So, in this next bit of her statement, Che says that I got touchy-feely in a park, and I was making unwanted advances while she was crying and asking me to stop, and that I moved her hands to touch myself. This makes me sound like a monster, and if it did happen, I would be a monster. But this isn't how it happened. What did happen was this was a very awkward but mutual situation, where she describes I moved her hands to touch me. She did that of her own volition, and she even mentions this in Discord messages from after we met up in person, so yeah, I'm not sure why she would lie about that. And the way she talks about what happened at that park is very different from how she says it publicly. She is very much on board with it, with the messages from the time where it actually happened. And the way she talks about it then is very different from the way she talks about it in hindsight. I had absolutely no reason to suspect that she didn't want what was happening or that she wasn't on board with it. She even mentions doing other things, and I had no reason to not think that she wasn't as keen as I was. She also mentions me taking off her bra while she's crying. Firstly, I would never do this. If I ever suspected that she didn't want any advance I was making, I would stop. And also, the way she talks about it in the messages from the time gives the impression that I wasn't even intentionally trying to take off her bra, which I wasn't, so there's that. In general, this was a kind of awkward teenage situation. We were both kind of trying to guess what the other wanted and cater to that. She also mentions that I was asking for a blowjob. It probably came up in conversation, maybe, that, or wouldn't it be cheeky if we did it here, in that way. But I never honestly wanted or expected one from her, especially in a public place. And then we've got the DMs that she released, beginning with the most bandied around ones. These are jokes, not good jokes, not acceptable jokes, not appropriate jokes, not funny jokes. And honestly, they're probably going to haunt me until the day I die. They probably the worst messages ever sent by man. But they are jokes, and they are taken out of context and put into a much, much worse one. And at the time, especially in my friend groups and social circles, online and offline, edgy humor like this was cool. It was funny. Obviously, in hindsight, it's not very funny and it's not appropriate. If you told me that these made her uncomfortable, I would be inclined to believe you. And over the course of this relationship, there are plenty of things that I do regret. There are plenty of things I wish I could take back, and if I could, I would in a heartbeat. You know, I was emotionally unavailable. I didn't give you the support you needed. I was overly focused on certain physical things. I was a controlling asshole. You know, I was a dick, and I'm sorry for that. I really am. It's probably my biggest regret in life, and if I could go back and change it, then I would.
After Slazo's video and the sort of generally positive response to it, a lot of commentary channels took back what they said and cited that they were just trying to support someone that was coming out against someone who was much more popular than they were. Alex, of course, doubled down and said that even the things that Slazo admitted were creepy and he wouldn't want to be friends with someone like that anymore. Alex later down the line sort of puts out like a text apology kind of notes app on Twitter situation where he never actually says at all that he's sorry. And Bluesdank said that it was a lot of, in the behind the scenes, a lot of this was instigated by Alex pushing to immediately get rid of Michael for the sake of like having no damage to like PR or his social status. Alex talked about it after in retrospect and continued to just separate himself from any major responsibility, kind of just being like, well, I was fooled, so why are people mad at me? The issue, dumbass, is that you refuse to ever contextualize anything and think for a second and stop, because you have this never-ending cycle of fame-seeking, backstabbing, ego, pseudo-intellectual, and pseudo-professionalism. Like, ImAllexx's work a real job for 1 week, challenge, difficulty, impossible. Like, this is somebody who... It's kind of like the manifestation in the way that, like, people used to be critical of the Paul brothers and being like, oh my god, they're so, like, full of themselves. Like, they never had to work a real job. Well, like, because people kind of have, like, a more, I guess, like, they view commentary content as more, like, realistic to a real job, if that makes sense. But, like, this man isn't doing anything. I would even go to say that he probably has a writer. If not a writer, like a researcher who finds everything for him. I had someone help me research a couple videos. Like 2 videos, I think, so far. I think the second one I haven't even made yet. My dog is barking. It's different when you have, like, you just need, like, the basis and the structure, and then you still make the entire script. When you're just, like, getting link dumps, it's not really super creative or indicative of, like, your process. Alex then also called Perez Hilton a predator because he talked about Charlie D'Amelio a lot and how she was like dancing in a bikini or something. I'm trying to talk over Gus barking. I don't know if it's after this whole debacle. Alex essentially abandoned this friend group and dropped like everyone like flies, and then just moved onto the British commentary community. Being biased, and I wanted to delete that as well because I had a few people closer to me saying like, literally just stay quiet, delete everything, shut the f up, ignore it, like, you're not involved, you don't want to be involved, what's the point in throwing shit away for this? And I'm like, you're probably right. So that's why I went quiet, but at the same time, like, I didn't want to like make a statement and add to anything. I think adding to the fire was like something as well, but at the same time I didn't want to also tweet like, these people are idiots for saying all this shit and riding this boat with like this whole idea that he's 100% guilty with no actual physical evidence. I didn't want to like shit on them because like some of them were still like my friends, even though I didn't really know at the time whether this was right or wrong because they were so adamant they had something on him. I mean, but we didn't see anything. So, you know, it's one of those weird. But I think the obvious guy who takes the cake with spreading the most misinformation
So obviously Alex, I think his Twitter videos were pretty damaging, for sure. I think he became the face of the situation pretty quickly. I've had a lot of arguments with Alex through the years, and this is just one of those ones where I just lost energy of ever trying to like rebuild anything with him. I could probably be in the same, I have been in the same room as him since, not intentionally. He just walked past through like a lobby of a building, and I just looked the guy in the eye and saying there's no need for me to ever speak to that guy again. I could stomach him, I could be in the same room as him, but I could never trust that guy with anything. So it's just one of those things, sadly. I mean, that situation, I don't particularly think he had good intentions. I think maybe inside his head he might have done, but I don't think he had good intentions towards the end of it, especially when he went on that podcast and said that he was lied to. Which, I mean, yeah, of course he was. But I mean, like, to an extent, like some Shay said was like quite flat out lies, because she, didn't provide context for a lot of things she was saying. I was shown like what the group chat looked like and some of the messages that were put in there because I asked someone in the group chat to show me like what was going on, because I was literally like so angry at one point, and I saw everything and I was just like, what the fuck? And that's kind of another reason why I went quiet completely, was because like I was just beside myself with disappointment with some of the people in there and some of the shit they were saying.
Which this moves us to the next but far less serious kind of part of this conversation. Part 4, Eboys and British commentary community. Now we're gonna go through the kind of most recent friend group that Alex with, and these are the kind of biggest creators that he was consistently publicly involved with. The players in this saga are iNabber, KingAnii, ImAllexx's, and James Marriott. There are many videos done between these 4 creators and Alex. However, many noticed in the past year or so that a lot of these collaborations had fizzled out, except for George, aka ImAllexx. From the Slazo situation, it appears that the entire friend group of Kwite, Pyro, Bluesdan, KingAnii, and Slazo, and any of that sort of Reddit community had wanted nothing to do with him. And Kwite actually talks about this really recently on Twitch, and I'll put in that really short clip now.
I just want to make this very clear. This is purely I think it was junior or senior year. It was senior year. I was dating this dude, fucking give me grace. I was fucking a Discord denizen. I was dating this, like, this is how I know ImAllexx's bi, because I was dating a dude who just stopped talking to me, and the next time I see him, I'm dating ImAllexx's. Goddamn! Goddamn! Hold! We go back, bro. I knew that before he's 10K. Like goes back. The lore go deep. The lore go deep, bro. It cuts deep. You better hide a little sister from him. And you know, this was a lifelong goal of mine. I'm gonna be so real with y'all. While we are hating, peak the almost 2 million subs. Bro was 2.15 at one point. Now he's below 2. Oh! My whole career! Oh! Yeah, bro, he got shit on me! Less subs, less motion, less good looks, white. Christ! Nothing! All his friends, my friends! Oh! F this queer. F him! Oh, actually, yeah. Alex has fucked over every single person he's ever known. Lewis Buckin fucking bars. Lewis Buckin like fucking having a great day right now. Freak. Might have burned a bridge there, but like he is a weirdo. Admit up to it. What happened to Lewis? DM'd a minor.
Now it's like everybody that Alex was once associated with hates him. There are a lot of different YouTube friendships, different phases where people collab a lot more that kind of fizzle out, and it's not typically malice like that. For example, if we're talking about me, in 2022 I was doing a decent amount of collabs with these sort of kind of more lighthearted channels like Anna Marie Forcino. I did some stuff with Austin Green. I did some stuff with Gabby Bell and Nick DeRamio. There is no malice, and we're not even like separate necessarily. Gabby Bell, like, I think has just extended so far out of my reach as far as popularity goes. Like, when I started collabing with her, she had 30,000 subs or something, or 50,000 subs, and then now she has like 1 million. So that's just Like, I'm just skill issue on my part probably. And then my videos don't weigh well for collaboration, so I just don't do them. I don't know how else to really say that, you know? After all these people were making these videos together, so KingAnii, Memeless, James Marriott, iNabber, and ImAllexx's, Fraser, which is iNabber's name, suggested that they make a group channel with the 5 of them. Then a couple of months later, the channel Eboys was announced publicly, which consisted of KingAnii, ImAllexx's, Memeless, and James Marriott. Notice how someone's missing? iNabber found out about the existence of this channel the same time that I did, and everybody else in the general public via Twitter. Many people are quick to come to Fraser's defense, kind of saying that they remember him talking about wanting to do a group collab channel, and also knew that all these people were friends that he frequently collaborated with in the first place. Now, quick aside, but I'd watched the Beta podcast reunion episode with Tommy FC, Keemstar, and Colossal's Crazy, and they bring up Eboys and iNabber. Tommy claimed that Fraser was not included because he was too fat. I think that's a stupid response. I think it wasn't something that simple. I think what it is, and something that a lot of people pointed out, was that iNabber was the only channel below 1 million subscribers at the time. And again, iNabber's content is more similar to my content than ImAllexx's content, and I think maybe they just felt like he wouldn't be a good fit for something like that. It is interesting, in retrospect, looking back, that no one's ever mentioned how strange the Eboy project started, progressed, and ended. Because it started as a backstab, essentially, right? To the person whose idea it was. Then, when I looked at it today, the Eboys videos on the main channel only lasted 8 months, with the first video being April 11th, 2020, and the last video being December 23rd, 2020, because we do need to milk the Christmas AdSense as much as humanly possible. The main channel only had 29 total videos, and currently has 1.28 million subs. The most popular channel video is sitting at about 6.4 million views. The channel sort of transitioned to the Eboys podcast, which began on August 12th, 2020 and ended April 21st, 2021. Now, this is where it gets kind of strange. The last episode of the podcast was clickbaited as this like announcement episode and showed this new Patreon that they were making and how they were trying to like expand the brand. It was pretty much just them being like, oh my god, we have this is me being British. Oh my god, we made a podcast Patreon. So even though we're all millionaires and we all make content that takes 10 minutes to make and pump out 2 videos at over 200,000 views a piece a week, so we're making like £40,000 a month on AdSense alone, we still need more money. Give us more money. And then, bad British accent over, by the way. You're welcome for that, regardless. 1 week to the day from that, on the Eboys Twitter, you get this kind of weird video of KingAnii coming on and saying that there was no podcast episode that day and that they didn't meet the expectations of the audience and that they're going to pay them back for the Patreon. I'll put that clip in now.
Friends, sorry, there isn't a podcast tonight. And we're going to refund all the Patreon money because we haven't delivered on that. So sorry about that. Kisses.
Then just 24 hours later, on April 29th, 2021, the Eboys Twitter announces that the Eboys were disbanding. So within seemingly 4 months, they stopped making videos on the channel, vamped up the podcast, created a Patreon to further the revenue of the podcast, backpedaled on the podcast release, and then disbanded. In the statement, they claim that they're going to keep collaborating in each other's content, which was sort of true, but that didn't last that long because like James and Will kind of stopped making content with them not that long after that. But George did it for a little while. Now, it's also interesting because they stated that it was like to further like their own like podcast, you know, get their boots in on something. I'll have it on screen, right? The statement. But why would you have enough forefront and planning to do something kind of robust, like set up a podcast, a revenue stream, and structure a schedule, to immediately abandon it like that? Rumor has it that KingAnii disbanded the group because Alex was getting increasingly controlling and would only ever talk to anyone about YouTube and numbers and revenue. This is alleged in-game and Minecraft. I don't even remember which video I heard this from. I think it was... Thing is, too, the reason why I'm so, like... is because when you're a famous YouTuber, like I... no, but, like... I know some people who know some people, situation type deal, and I follow some private Twitters that some people don't, situation type deal. I've kind of seen this whole thing kind of progress and come through, but I don't want to accidentally release like private details that people have. So yeah, I have to be careful, and I can't cite everything directly because I don't really remember if I can or cannot sometimes, if that makes sense. While the situation pales in comparison to the Zaptie and Slazo situations and the thing we're going to get into next, the general theme of being fame and money and power hungry comes through in this, and also gives context to the statements that are going to come later that I mentioned before. Now, let's go into the most serious part of the video. Part 5, Alex and the abuse allegations from Alice and KingAnii. This began actually stirring a couple of months ago in regards to Alice, when Alice posted a TikTok that was just 2 pictures. I'll put them on screen right now. Then people began commenting, asking if the person that she was talking about in this TikTok was ImAllexx. And essentially what started happening was she was kind of liking comments, which was sort of confirming everything. Once conversations started cycling more and rumors got more intense behind the scenes, a clip of Alex on a Discord call threatening Alice starts circulating. This is a clip that many people have shown in their videos where Alex says that he is going to bash her head in with a brick. I'm making a point personally to limit super intense clips and everything because I want this to be a video where you can sort of understand what's happening without being overt and hyper kind of triggering. And to be completely honest, it's also really hard for me viewing this stuff because of some experiences that I've had in the past. And I think this is a little bit off script, and hopefully this doesn't bite me in the booty really bad. But the guys that are these like nerdy, maybe not super social, gamer types that, don't necessarily seem to be super in it with women, if you will, that you get to like or whatever, can sometimes be the most like manipulative and nasty, and it just seems to like completely come out of left field. And this is like the vibe that I'm getting from Alex a lot as well. Very soon after this, and about 2 weeks ago, an 81-page Google Doc dropped from Alice, which I will link that in the description, and there was also a Google Drive that included audios, calls with Alex's camera on, screenshots, and so much more. The document also details the timeline of Alice's and Alex's relationships, and I would say that about 20% of the doc was written statement, and then the rest of it was just like proof on each kind of section that followed. Alice described Alex as someone who was sweet and attentive at first, but as soon as he felt like he had her, he began to demand that she would always talk to him because she worked from home. Then on Discord calls, they would begin to argue, and Alex would occasionally turn on the camera that she could see how viscerally angry he was when he would scream at her on the calls. This is where that clip had come from. They were having many horrible arguments, and Alex still insisted that she move in with him. This is even after she had kind of said that she was uncomfortable doing so because of how bad the arguments were. To quote the doc directly, Alice wrote, "I called him abusive, and then he called me a melt. I told him I was going to bed, having not had any previous argument, and this started a clash because I said it in a bad tone. He goes, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to break your neck." He apologized after this, and despite this, they actually do end up moving in together. And then this only made things get much, much worse. Alice starts recording more and telling her parents everything as it happens, as she's starting to fear for what could happen to her. Within just 4 days of living together, a fight escalated to the point of becoming physical, where Alex grabbed Alice's hoodie while she was going downstairs, grabbed her on it and pulled so hard that she fell to the floor. When she continued to run, Alex had put her in a headlock and covered her mouth to silence her screams. There was also another fight, another physical altercation down the line, which resulted in Alice moving out, where Alex kicked her in the back, to which then she packed up her things, and Alex destroyed her setup, smashed her monitors, broke her keyboard, her mouse, everything, just destroyed all of her property because she dared leave him. And then also, like, he, before this, had broken her glasses and pretended it wasn't him, and he hid them in the garbage. Alex was just making a point to cripple this girl and bring her down to a point where there could be of no return. This is when you have this like level of audacity and sickness that is just beyond, I think, comprehension of people with morals and positive life attributes. After they broke up, Alex starts messaging her nonstop and love bomb via flowers, letters, Amazon packages. And in the Google Drive, there is a 25-minute call where he just rambles trying to make Alex feel bad. I'll play a really small clip of that right now so you can kind of see how manipulative this man was being. And saying man just feels reductionist to like how much of a pathetic weasel this guy is and has always been.
I was trying to be like too cool and nonchalant at points, and then I would let it slip how uncool and how not well I was taking everything, and by that I mean my behaviour. I haven't been lashing out at you because of the fact that you left me. I've been lashing out at you because of the fact that I didn't fix my stuff. And I think what's worse, I'm being completely honest here, because I don't want to leave anything off the table at this point, is that, like, I generally had a conversation, like, with my friends a few months ago just about, like, how much I feel like, you know, I've just, like, I don't feel good about myself, and I would wake up a lot of the times when I was with you, and I'd think, I knew that I like didn't deserve to still be with you. And instead of fixing it, I was just like, oh, I've already fucked it anyway. I became worse. Like, I sabotaged it. And it was intentional, because I knew that I was being shitty. And I just thought, oh, it's already too late. And it's really fucking piss poor. Obviously, it wasn't as clean cut as that. A lot of this stuff has been really complicated to work out, you know, because I blow hot and cold. You've seen me. I'm apologising 1 minute, shouting the next. Angry 1 minute, please come here, hold me. You know. It's like, I just feel like I've been really battling through this very weird thing. Also, you know, with issues we'd have, you did this. Oh, wait, no, I see you didn't. It's okay, don't worry about it, forget about it. But it doesn't matter. I opened up a wound, and it scars. And the scar is always there. Just because I feel okay about it now doesn't mean that you did. And when I used to say stuff about, like, why can't we just move on? It's because I felt like I felt like I was comfortable. And I didn't make the effort to see if you were. And if you weren't, because I was, I didn't understand why you couldn't be. But I don't really know what that is. But I know that it's wrong. And I know that I knew of it, and to be honest, I thought that at a certain point, when I was sleeping on the sofa and stuff, I convinced myself that that's what you wanted. You obviously didn't, so I'm not saying you wanted it and I did it. As in, I convinced myself because I was making an excuse for myself, not as in, I was doing it for you. I don't mean if I say anything along those lines, that's not how I mean it. I wasn't doing it for you, I was doing it for me. It was easier to avoid you. I wasn't putting the effort in.
And I think the darkness just laid below, because your willingness to discard everyone who's done anything for you, who has helped you, who has been with you in difficult times, to have everything be so driven by fame and success. A lot of the ways he would talk down to her was like, well, I'm a famous YouTuber and you don't know what it is, and I am the only one with money or anything important to bring, so I have to go talk about Jojo Siwa for the 5th time this week. Like, it's genuinely so ridiculous, and I'm trying to keep my mood neutral to kind of keep it this not too triggering, but also not too... I'm not, like, tap dancing on a grave, you know what I mean? Because I think I was watching some of the videos that were covering this, and people were, like, cracking a bunch of jokes about the doc, questioning really stupid attributes that are not relevant. Willie Macho was in the Twitter replies within like 10 seconds being like, well, I saw that it said that he was mad that you were messaging Twitter mutuals. Were you cheating on him? Even if, honestly, she was, even if that was happening, which it was not, him putting her in a headlock and covering her mouth to silence her screams should have been the cue to be like, maybe I should shut the hell up for 5 minutes. After this, iNabber, KingAnii, and ImAllexx's, and another commentary channel, I can't remember which one it was. You'll see in a second what I'm going to do, put out a bunch of statements because they're all kind of all over the place and I had to get them from so many different tweets. I'm going to do a voiceover section really quick of me kind of reading them, and then we'll get back to the next part of the video. There are actually quite a few statements to get through, so we'll start with iNabber's because it was first. So it says, I should say, yeah, I know about the situation, and I hope you all send nothing but support to Alice. Genuinely some of the most horrific I've ever read. I cannot explain how brave it is to come out and speak about this stuff, especially considering how long it seemed to have been going on. Really trying not to come here with the eyes and make it about me, as this is about Alice, and she deserves all the support possible. But yeah, I should say, of course, I didn't know about this until recently. I wasn't even aware the two had fully broken up until April. That's how in the dark I was on this. I have very much been in the dark of all this until recently, which makes me feel worse. The level of what was said in the document about him is indescribable, just absolutely horrific. Situation makes me feel genuinely ill, but also angry. But I would prefer to keep those personal thoughts private for now, as this is about Alice and not me. Also, where that misspelled document in the last post, yeah, my head is naturally spinning a bit with this. Don't really think words can describe how I'm feeling about what I read in that doc, so I will say please just be kind to Alice. Just send your support and be kind to her. It's so I wish nothing but the best for her. I honestly feel like I should, but I also want to say more, but I generally don't know what to write. I have like a million thoughts. I know this seems very unprofessional way to respond to this, as it more feels like I'm venting about it, but I'm not going to give some scripted PR document. This is one of the most situations I've ever seen. Then there is a statement from ImAllexx's. ImAllexx has two statements, so this is the first one. It says, I'm aware of the Alex situation. I would usually wait until both parties have said their side publicly before speaking about it, but I think the evidence here is overwhelming. I spent this morning reading what Alice has written and going over the evidence she's provided, and no one should have had to go through what she has. It's awful and disturbing and has seriously shocked me, and I'm still processing what happened. This is one of the worst situations I've ever seen in my life, and I hope Alice is okay. It took a lot of courage to speak about this. So his is just providing details, it seems, where it says, just to follow up, Alex and I lived together between 2018 and 2022. They started dating in 2023. I've only seen him in person 2 or 3 times since moving out. I don't socialize much at all in the typical UK YouTube circles, especially in the last couple of years. I only found out about the situation in general on April 2nd of this year, when a fellow content creator brought it up to me in a call when I suggested a joint recording between us and him. He said he didn't know any specifics or that what was even being alleged, just that it was bad. All I heard prior to this was that they argued frequently. A couple of weeks later, Alice started posting TikToks alluding to the situation. It wasn't until just after that I got a bit more clarity when I was out for dinner with another creator and they brought up the fact that Alice had briefly published some text messages from him on TikTok before deleting them. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know just how bad it was until I went over all the information when it was made public. I don't want to take attention away from the victim, but I think it is important I clarify my perspective and timeline of events. Please send your support to Alice. Then we have a statement from KingAnii that says, R.E. Alex. Firstly, I really hope Alice is doing well and commend her massively for having the courage to get out of there. As Mia mentioned, which is his ex-girlfriend, which I'll read her statement as well to clarify, there were rumors of his behavior earlier this year. Myself and others haven't had contact with him since or been his friends for even longer. With that being said, the severity of the abuse that Alice published was far worse than anything I'd ever been discussed. The Google Drive is abhorrent, and what he put her through is inexcusable. Some guy named Italian Bach, I don't really know who that is, just says, I have read Alice's statement about Alex and I'm absolutely disgusted by what I have seen and read. What he has done is inexcusable and unacceptable. I didn't know Alex outside of a few recordings we did a while ago and had no idea what was going on in his private life. Alice deserves all the support in the world right now. It's incredibly brave that she was a thing that she has done. I hope she is doing okay. So there is a statement from KingAnii's ex-girlfriend as well, who talked about how she doubts that ImAllexx's was hiding this as well as people allude. So Mia writes, R.E. ImAllexx's. This was something I've been aware of since May last year and is something that in my opinion is well known throughout the industry. I can't speak for people who aren't in our group or who I don't see regularly, but the openness at which this was discussed amongst people last year, I generally find it hard to believe that creators close to Alex had no idea this was going on. When I found out Alex and I were signed to the same talent agency, I immediately made them aware of the accusations and put pressure on them to drop him, which they did. This was June 2023. From the documents in the drive, it looks like things escalated even further from what I was aware of: emotional abuse, threats of violence, use of racial slurs, which is also heartbreaking. I didn't know Alice personally, but sending her so much love and support. That is actually something that I forgot to even bring up until now, because there's just so much horrific content. Alex, as somebody who's this huge, like, you know, very virtue signaling, you know, my feminist literature books type man, to do all this stuff and this content and come across in the way that he was trying to come across, to then literally be calling his girlfriend the N-word in private and just like letting it slide like constantly, which clear that he's very comfortable with using it. So there's no way of even being like, oh, it was just like a slip. Even then, that's inexcusable just in general. Like, that's just a stupid excuse as well. So to then have like him just like calling this girl slurs all the time is another aspect of it. You can read all the details, as I mentioned, in the doc if you so desire. What I've done is kind of summarize that particular section, because that's what most of the content is right now, if you wanted to watch someone break down the document further. But this video was kind of showing to construct the whole narrative of like everything that's happened in the past leading up to now and why people have had their feelings. I also want to mention that I find the statements to be really impersonal and very like, again, virtue signally PR vibes. Like, it's like, oh, I'm saying something because I don't want to pay, you know, I don't want to take attention away from the victim, because that was a narrative that people were saying on Twitter when people like Kavos were like, see what I was saying, you know, see, he's always been awful, yada yada, whatever. So then people were saying, oh, you're taking attention away from the victim. So this was the angle they took for their statements, and it's just hyper disingenuous. I feel like these people were never actually friends. They lived together for convenience to make content, probably. Like, it's just really disenchants any sort of willingness to see humanity in these types of content creators, I feel like, at this point. But, you know, I guess that depends on the person. Once Alice came out, KingAnii, yes, the one from earlier, turns out that she had actually dated Alex a while back, when Alex had kind of integrated into the Reddit community group, the one that ended up kind of trying to destroy Slazo's career. Annie puts out a statement about her relationship with Alex, and I noticed that a lot of focus on Annie's particular allegations were like, okay, cool that you're coming out with this 5 years after the fact, but your Slazo tweets are still up, which I think is a bit of a silly defense. I can also somewhat understand, like, why would you only say these things about Alex 5 years after the fact when it's more beneficial to you, despite the fact that you were willing to go on the hate train to bury someone else a few years before. But I think it's not that simple. I think it has way more nuance than that. And I think that Annie's like experience had not felt validated until this time. And sometimes you need to kind of remove this prior context, despite the fact that it might seem worthy to fixate on. I'm going to do another voiceover reading this statement and talking about it a little more, and I'll come back. So here's what KingAnii had to say about Alex. It reads, my experience with ImAllexx's. Though we never confirmed to the public because I personally like keeping my relationships private, I dated Alex from June 2017 until March of 2018. It was the most toxic relationship I've ever been in, and I was lucky to get out of it when I did. When we were dating, though he was from England and I lived in America, we were pretty much never apart for longer than a week. We stayed in Europe for a couple of months, then went to America for 6 months. He couldn't stay for 6 months straight due to visa implications, so he stayed 3 months, flew back to England for a few days, and then came back to America for another 3 months. After this 6 months was over and he couldn't come back to America again for a while due to visa requirements, we spent some time away from each other, and during that time, with help of my friends, I came to the realization that I was in the worst and most toxic relationship I had ever been in and had to get out. It started out great, as they always do, the honeymoon phase as they call it. But as time went on, things got worse and worse. I was fortunate to get out of it when I did, but reading all the new information that's come out, he's clearly gotten worse. During the relationship, he made me feel insane, like I wasn't myself anymore. It never felt like he listened to me. I always felt belittled and inferior. Whenever we recorded videos together, he would constantly talk over me and never let me have my moment. Most of the time when I had problems, he would always somehow make it about himself or talked about his own issues. He would get stressed over his YouTube channel constantly and complain about uploading as if it was the hardest job on the planet and no one had it harder than him. His classic line was, "I can't catch a f***ing break." If we ever had a disagreement, he would also sometimes allude to the possibility of killing himself over minor conflicts as a threat, so I couldn't continue with the conversation. It was nearly impossible to give him any kind of criticism, because it was like adding to the pile of minor issues he had already blown far out of proportion in his head. Another thing he did was spin his own narrative and twist words. He didn't just do this in the relationship, but he did it with his work and with his friends. It was the main reason why many people stopped talking to him, because we started to realize when there was even the smallest amount of drama and he heard about it, he would make sure to involve himself, even if the subject had absolutely nothing to do with him, and he would just make everything so much worse. For example, the Slazo situation. Though it was never in the original statement by Che, he somehow came to the conclusion that it was, and everyone else got blamed for saying his words. Somehow the situation went from being guilty of being a bad boyfriend to all of a sudden he's a racist. This was the nail in the coffin. I cut all contact with him after that. During our relationship, I bought him and I matching Alex and Annie bracelets for Valentine's Day because I was like, oh neat, a company with both of our names. You can see him pressing the heart on the bracelet to his lips in his Back to Nothing video, where he has since taken down from his channel. I would start at 4 minutes. I also attached the video here in case the link gets removed. The video was released as a response to me breaking up with him. He uploaded this video after I stopped talking to him as a way of trying to guilt me into replying to him. He did to me what he has done in the relationship with Alice, where he would fly off the handle and get mad, then act all apologetic and sad to try to get people to feel sorry for him and forgive everything he has said and done. Lastly, the only time he ever laid a finger on me was when he grabbed me as I was trying to run away from a conflict. We were trying to record a YouTube video together and he was getting frustrated, having to restart the recording multiple times. He started shouting and beating his fist on the table, even to go as far as to break his microphone. I was scared, so I got up to leave the room, which is when he grabbed my arm to physically stop me. I remember saying, "You grabbed my arm," several times in shock, as to say, who the fuck would ever grab someone like that? Once again, I was fortunate that I was the only time something like that ever happened. I got out before it got even worse, as it clearly has with the new information that came out. It saddens me that this has come so far. I wish Alice the best privately, and it breaks my heart to have seen all the things she had gone through. I hope Alice's and my story shows you what he's really like behind the scenes. If you're in an abusive relationship, please get out now. You cannot fix them. So we've seen through the experience with Alex's kind of more intimate partners that he will also leverage his fame and income and ego based on nothing and this so-called ability that he has. And I think that is kind of the main crux of, or kind of the nail that was inevitable to take him out, but was the result as well. But that kind of behavior, while much less serious seeming, has been consistent since his career began in like 2016. And I think this is why you're getting people like Kavos, you're getting people like Keemstar, Colossal's Crazy, and Tommy FC, and, you know, me, but not to the same degree, Paige Christie, or Petty, formerly known as Petty Page, and you're getting all these people that are like, you know, screw this guy. But I think a lot of this is like, I think a lot of those people behind the scenes knew so much more. And I think that's obviously why people were so kind of like leaned into the statements and tapped into like how they were kind of similar and the way that things came out. I also understand that there were allegations against iNabber that kept coming out. That's another one where it's like, I know some stuff that I don't think I can like publicly. I don't want YouTube to be my whole life. And I think that's something that a lot of people make the mistake of doing, maybe, and that's why you're getting people like ImAllexx's that build these egos that have no ground in reality. But I never want to release things or discuss things in a way that people are not okay with. I never want to add to the flame, or if I'm wrong about something in regards to something I've heard kind of behind the scenes, to ruin someone or further maybe even slander their ability to ever talk about anything. So in regards to Fraser's allegations from his ex-girlfriends, he had put out a document a couple of documents about her and what she said to kind of just combat what had happened. Based on what I've seen, I think that the way that his ex presented some things was not necessarily representative of at least how some of the stuff happened. But I'm also not in that relationship, and it's not that I'm not involved personally, and like I don't know these people on like a deep personal level. So I'm gonna put the documents down below to let you sift through if I can find any of it still, because also his ex privated the Twitter, so I don't even think I can get the stuff. I don't know if I could comment on that. I'm also going to be really honest. I don't know if I can go through with going through stuff like this again in the recent future. You can tell by how uncomfortable I am right now as well, probably why that is. But I'm going to conclude here. We went through who ImAllexx is, the various completely different friend groups that he's gone through, from edgelord commentary to Reddit to silly reaction video British people, to the allegations from 2 of his ex-partners that are both public figures, and the reception of the internet and his prior friend groups on this. I hope everyone's well. Thank you so much for staying through this video. The next one will be far sillier if the next one is my Dramageddon video that I plan on doing, but unless something else comes up, we'll see. Stay strong. If you are in a situation even remotely similar to this, please reach out to people. Please make sure you're safe. I hope everyone has an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.